cut, you'd walk away, and the monitor would immediately shriek at you to put your mask on. And because you realise that it's like everything. It's not really about any concern for your safety or anybody else's safety. It's concern for the fact that the insurance people run everything. And you can't make a film unless it's, as they call it, a bond. It's covered by a bond, and they can have people visiting the set without warning and closing it down whenever they like. And so you can imagine that was a bit hairy. But anyway,
it's hairy.
But yeah, and we all remember, of course, the cricket in 2020, shuttling between Old Trafford and Southampton, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Right, producer stepping in. We got Rebels at the gates. Desperate to come in.
So the format, Stephen, just to tell you, the format is just Simon and I will chat with you for a little bit. And then, we've got our members, as you're familiar with some of them, but we'll just got some questions, mainly cricket connected.
Super.
So that's all right, is it? Yeah. And
absolutely,
we're recording it to play to people, the members who aren't here tonight, who can watch it on catch up, if that's all right.
Yeah. And how much are Cinch paying you and Ryland for this extraordinary advertisement?
Cinch, they're bloody useless. Cinch, actually. Oh, I don't know. They gave me a few shirts. I sort of thought I'd put them up, and at least there's Beefy in the background over my this shoulder.
Yes, I see that.
In getting his wicket at Edgbaston. Anyway, so we'll just start with a tiny little few titles, and then off we go, basically. Yeah.
Right. Is everybody good? Right. Everybody good?
Yeah. Yeah, we're good.
So, Mr. Simon Mann, yeah. I'll be alerting you who's coming next on questions, right?
All right, Notes. Yeah, great. Excellent.
Right.
Can I share? Can I do the sharing?
Yeah, because you're co-host, so you'll find.
Okay, great.
Right, you all good? I'm going to let everyone in. 3, 2, 1. Everyone's coming in.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special guest, and he is a national treasure. He's, of course, the man who's the broadcaster, the comedian, the actor, the film director and writer, the question master. He's done so many things in his life, but of course he is, as we all know, an ardent cricket fan as well. So really delighted to welcome to the world's best cricket club, Stephen Fry. Fantastic, Stephen, to have you on. All the way.
Thank you, Simon. It's a delight
LA
to be here
as well. Is that right?
Oh, have we frozen? Oh yeah,
we're here. So that was the applause. I hope you could hear a bit of applause there. Try and get you into the spirit of being in a live audience. You're in LA, is that right?
I am. Yes. Yeah. Just for this week, actually, I'm going back at the end of the week. I've been filming in Mexico, where I caught COVID, which was thrilling. So after 2 years of thinking I'd managed to get away with it, or I was a special, somehow immune person and would never get it, I finally succumbed. And didn't get it badly, but it was just a bit necessary to have to stay here and sort of isolate for a while.
God, you poor thing. Simon Mann's here as well, and welcome to everybody. I know tonight you've lots of attendees tonight, maybe 1 or 2 new people. So welcome to the club. I hope you'll enjoy this evening. You'll get your chance to ask your questions shortly. Simon, what's your first memory of Stephen on screen?
That's a good question. I think that the first one, probably the one that really resonates for me, was in Blackadder Goes Forth, Lord Melcher. General Melcher. Well, although actually Lord Melcher in the Elizabethan drama, but actually the one that because it used to really, First World War used to really get my blood boiling, was General Melcher. I think, yeah, definitely.
Can you, Stephen? Stephen, can you just go close to the microphone and just give us your best Blackadder?
Whoa, there we go. That is the microphone very close now. That's probably too close, and I've actually just
destroyed the setup, have you?
Yeah, that's quite amusing, actually. I can maybe put it there.
Sorry, that was silly. I was just silly with that.
No, it wasn't at all. I think it was stupid of me. What I'm going to do, if you can still hear me,
we can.
Move it to another. It just came off its thing. Get it in there. and it can sort of stretch over there. Sorry about this. Is lashing it up now. The hell's teeth.
Well, of course, we'd have to have a drama with you on, wouldn't we?
Yes. It's just pathetic. I'm so sorry. That should be fine now. There we go. And if I do that, then you don't see it so badly. And how is the signal? Is it okay?
Yes, excellent.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh,
you've just got to give us. You've got to give us.
Oh yes. I don't know where that came from, that noise. It's a thing Hugh and I used to do, my friend Hugh Laurie and I used to do, which originally derived from my mocking, a certain style of Shakespearean actor who would put extra syllables at the end of words. Let me not be mad. Like that, they just add a strange sound. And so we would do these actors who added words, and they became, oh, man, and like that, until it became, just became a phrase we would say to each other all the time. And in fact, we still do. When we phone each other up, I just go, and he goes, and
that's your call to each other.
Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah.
Have you ever played Lear, King Lear?
No, I never played Lear. I feel sadly not. It would be a great role to play as I age. I mean, that is the beauty of being an actor as opposed to a sportsman. All my life, because of my love of cricket, I have had this issue, which is that I am utterly untalented at it. And so a lot of my teenage was spent falling asleep, imagining myself opening the bowling for England and making extraordinary breakthroughs and watching the stumps cartwheeling away and all those pathetic fantasies that we all have. I mean, it's, whatever our sport, whatever our preference, but this knowledge that I could never do it. And it was mitigated by the fact that sport is a blaze of glory. And a lot of sports people, and I don't mean you in this case, but in fact, we can talk about why cricket is more exempt than most sports. But a lot of sports people, like a remarkable rocket, they fill the sky with glory. Only war and sport can offer true glory. And war has a dark side that sport doesn't quite have, although it has its dark sides. Nothing like as bad as war, but it is capable of that Achilles-like blaze of glory that is from, the age 17 to the age 32, if you're lucky, maybe a bit longer in some cricketing disciplines and a few other sports. But generally speaking, it's a small period of your life in which there is a glory that it's inimitable. No other field of human endeavor seems to have it, as I say, except perhaps being a warrior in the old days, like an Achilles. But the price you pay is that you end up like a spent rocket. Without naming names, I'm sure you'll know what I mean. When I first started to go to watch cricket matches and then occasionally meet ex-cricketers, if I was lucky enough, you go to a Lord's thing and there would be a great hero of the 60s and early 70s, but they were a slightly trembling old figure with perhaps too many whiskies in them and burst.
Is that the thing? Is that the
burst capillaries? And yes.
Does that underline that old phrase, never meet your heroes then?
Well, no, it's not never meet them. It's just realize that the price you pay for that extraordinary moment in the sun. And I guess ballet dancers could say the same, and other dancers, and those who rely on physical fitness and grace and beauty and speed and balance and things that go with age. The price to pay is a tough one, and therefore one is always left with the question that in fact Achilles was given, or Achilles' mother Thetis. So there was a prophecy that her son would either live the most glorious life of any mortal, celebrated, worshipped for his golden heroism and speed and grace and everything that Achilles the warrior had. He had that option. Or he would have a life, but it would be a short life. It would be a burst, and then it would be over, and he would be dead. Or he could have a long, happy, contented life fulfilled with family and glory in obscurity. No one would remember his name. And his mother, being a mother, of course, wanted the latter for him. But he, being a young man, of course, wanted the glory. And we're all faced with that, in a sense. I mean, I wasn't, because I never had even the hint of the talent. But those who can say, well, am I going to devote my life to sport, knowing that when it's over, I will have, 15 years in which of my life. You know what I mean?
The thing is, you don't think, I suppose, you're quite right, but you don't think like that when you're embarking on a world of sport, a life of sport. You don't think, I'm going to have knackered hips and a buggered knee when I'm 37, which is me. But so I guess you just you get immersed in it. By the way, talking of acting, I know you and I have that sort of common theme, because my dad was an actor and he was in the Jeeves and Wooster, actually, one or two of the episodes of years ago. But I think the great thing about acting is the great thing about acting is you're trying to always play parts that are younger than you, and you need to worry when you're starting to get cast in parts that are older than you, because I remember my dad eventually getting a cast as a corpse, and then, well, you know that you're dead then, don't you? Anyway, sorry, that's the silliest side.
But the reason I raised the whole thing is because you can play King Lear if you're an actor. You can keep acting until you're 80 or 90, as Ian McKellen and Judi Dench and others show, that there are always roles for you, which is the reward you get for a career that is, to me at least, far less exciting than a life in sport.
By the way, I wasn't implying that you were due the King Lear. I just thought you might have played it in rep or at university or something, rather than nowadays. One more just question from me before Simon gets in, and we have our members. And we all know about your love of cricket. One little image I've got in my head is something you told me once, that a Christmas present that either you gave to Hugh Laurie or he gave to you was a cradle. A slip cradle, which you said on either Christmas Day or Boxing Day, when you're in Norfolk, you actually get out and use.
That's right. We shoved it on the lawn, and you know what it's like catching a cricket ball in April, let alone midwinter December. And the slip cradle, for someone who hasn't seen it, is like it's rather a wonderful sort of bent staves of wood in a sort of shallow dip. That means when you throw it, when you throw the ball at the cradle, the ball will come off at a sharp sort of rising angle, not unlike an outside edge to a slip fielder. So it's called a slip cradle or catching cradle or something. And yeah, we did. We got shivering there with our hands trying to catch the ball, feeling it was a fine addition to the household.
It's an infuriating contraption, actually, because a number of times you get the ball just on the end of it and it just pings miles over your head, or if there's not three of you at each end, you just end up sort of retrieving the ball all the time. Now, the link with you and Simon Mann is a good one, is that you dreamt of being Mike Proctor and his hero is Mike Proctor. Is that right, Simon?
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Bristol. I grew up watching Mike Proctor running at the county ground, and he was in the 70s. There was, if you're a Somerset fan, you followed Ian Botham. If you're a Gloucestershire fan, it was Mike Proctor. And so why Mike Proctor, Stephen?
Well, again, I mean, it was really circumstance. I grew up in the school holidays, at least in Norfolk, which is a minor county, although it has many connections with great cricketers like the Edridges and so on. And it's a lovely ground up in Lavenham, in Norwich. But I was at prep school in Gloucestershire. And so on Sundays, some boys who were friends of mine and I would go and watch the Sunday league games with Gloucestershire. There was Shepherd and there was Proctor. And Proctor was, it seems in one's memory, that he got a hat-trick every other Sunday and a very fast 60 every Sunday. And as I've said before to Simon, I unfortunately modelled my bowling on him. And as you know, he was a very chest-on bowler. He managed to get the most extraordinary swing, it seems, in the ball, sort of little sharp ducking balls. And so I tried to imitate him, bowling off the wrong foot, which I still do to this day. But I'm very pleased, actually. I've just been doing something for his charity. He does these wonderful charities for diversity in cricket and for all kinds of really good things, mental health and other such things. With Lancashire at the moment, he's doing something. And so I was able to do a little bit for that. And it's great that he's still around. He was one of those South Africans who, for reasons that we can all understand, was, not able to play international cricket. Players like Barry Richards and so on, some of the best players of their age who could only shine in these sometimes very small, little kind of county situations. But it was just marvelous to watch him because I suppose without knowing why, I sensed that he was different from other players in his style and his manner. And yeah, he was. There were a lot of Proctor fans. He was greatly loved.
This sounds like a QI question. What's the link between CB Fry and Mike Proctor? Because I think you're related to CB Fry in some sort of
I wish
way,
you were closer. Yeah, for those who don't know, CB Fry was one of the cricketers of what is known as the golden age, the Edwardian age of cricket. He was a great friend of Ranjit Singh, Prince Ranjit Singh, who supposedly invented the leg glide, I think. And there are all kinds of stories about CB Fry because he wasn't just a great cricketer. He also played in an FA Cup final and he held the world long jump record.
Yeah.
For 17 years he held it. The story goes he had lunch in his club and went to the athletic track, still had a cigar going that he'd lit in the cab on the way, put it down on the bench, changed into his strip, went out, did 2 jumps, the second of which was the world record, and came back and his cigar was still alight. I don't know. Well, the story's like that. But there is a story that he was offered the throne of Albania. Maybe this is a connection with Simon Mann. Maybe Simon was offered the throne of Albania.
No. The connection between CB Fry and Mike Proctor, actually, apart from your interest in them both or relation to them both, is they both scored 6 successive hundreds, and they're the only 2 of the only 3 players to have ever done that. It's a bizarre fact, isn't it?
Extraordinary, isn't it? And CB Fry was also, rather brilliant. He was first in the Oxford class lists, and he got the highest first in his degree. When King Zog fled Albania around the time Mussolini was threatening it, the League of Nations, the forerunner of the United Nations, looked around to think who could fill the vacuum for the throne of Albania. And Prince Ranjit Singh, who was a member of the League of Nations, suggested his friend CB Fry. He's a sensible fellow. He'd be a good king of Albania. So I used to, as a boy, think I might have been a prince of Albania if only he'd said yes, but he turned it down. They say that CB Fry, and this is attested, it sounds impossible, he could jump backwards onto the mantelpiece of a fireplace. So he could, with his back to the fire, he could jump backwards and land on the mantelpiece.
Wow.
What kind of spring in your knees would you need to be able to do that? And balance, not fall forward and fall off straight away.
Not the kind of thing you want to try, is it, really?
No, it isn't. Well, you'd try it outside with something gentle, and then if you got the action right, you could do it indoors, I suppose.
You'd probably try it without the fire being on to start with, I suppose. Anyway, sorry. Simon, sorry, I interrupted you there.
No. We've got lots of people who want to ask questions tonight, so I'm not going to. Normally, I would ask quite a lot of questions at this point, but I've actually got two questions. One, my wife forced me to ask, and so you can deal with this very quickly. And it's a very specific and niche question. She wants me to ask you, if you did one thing in LA, what would it be? You can think about that for a moment while I ask you the second question. That's you've done everything: writing, acting, directing, advertising, TV, radio, theatre, film, audiobooks. What about cricket commentary?
Gosh, my old school friend, sort of school, we quite overlapped entirely. Jonathan Agnew has asked me that, and not invited me onto his program, but I have been on the Test Match special, and he said, "Why don't you take over a bit of commentary while you're here chatting?" And I always said, "No, I'll make such an ass of myself. I'll say mid off when it's mid on. I'll my brain will scramble, and everybody listening will be so keen to catch me out and say he didn't realise that Cook was left-handed or whatever, and I'll get sort of total, I'll get in a bugger's muddle, as we say in Norfolk, and so And I just admire, I mean, the way you do it, the way you guys do it is astounding. I mean, apart from anything else, I don't know, people listening who have considered this, but it's how very rarely you speak over each other, which in real life it's the most common thing when people are sitting together. But on the radio, it sounds awful when people clash. And I've always assumed maybe there's a secret code that commentators know to put up their hand because they're about to speak and the other one will be quiet. But it seems to be instinctive. I don't know. I genuinely don't know how you do it. I once commentated with Sid Waddell for the darts, and he literally would just put a hand in my face when he was speaking, and then he'd drop the hand and I could speak. But you and Agus don't do that, do you?
There's occasionally you would use your hands, but no, I suppose you get into a rhythm actually with someone. So the more you commentate with them, the more you get to know their idiosyncrasies, the way they want to operate and the way you want to operate as well. I think that's probably the best way I can describe it. But you're right, actually, two people talking over each other on the radio, it's hopeless for the listener.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take our
what about his other question?
Well, I was just going to say one thing to do in LA. If you had to say one thing,
because LA doesn't really have a center. It doesn't have a central square like Times Square or anything like a theater district. And it's got Hollywood Boulevard and a few things you might have seen at the Oscars. I would say something unusual, something like the Brea Tar Pits, which is very unique to the actual history of the land in LA, which are down sort of downtownish area. There's a famous avenue or boulevard called La Brea, and it means tar pits in Spanish, I think. Tar, and they are these tar pits in which prehistoric animals got trapped. And it's a very unusual thing to go and visit because there's no equivalent that I know of in Britain or Europe, really. And if you go down there, you're on the Museum Mile, so you can go to LACMA, which is the LA Modern Art Museum, and things like that. So I would say La Brea Tar Pits.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we're going there in about 2.5 weeks, so there we go. I've satisfied her curiosity. Right, who's first, Noughts, tonight? Who's going to ask our first question?
John Lansdale is. I'll send.
Okay, go ahead, John.
All right, I'm honoured then. So the question for Stephen is, if you could make a TV show or film about any moment in cricket history, what would that be? And what role would you like to play in that?
That's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, they've had a go at famous moments in cricketing history, like the Bodyline series. I remember a TV version of that, which was quite comic. A lot of the actors bowling like I do, in fact. Well, I love the idea of cricket through, as it's developed. That there are two moments in human history that I always think are so fascinating about. One entirely on the British Isles, really, was think of shepherds, and you have at almost exactly the same time, it seems, if you're to believe current history. Some shepherds in Hampshire, one said to another one day, "You stand in front of that wicket gate, and I'll put some bales on the wicket gate, and I'll send a stone down towards you, and you pick up your crooked," which is what they call the shepherd's crook. You pick up your crooked and you hit, and you run up to there and then back again. And if you miss and I hit your wicket gate and knock the bales off it, the straw bales off it, then you're out. So, and so cricket was born. But at an identical period, some Scottish shepherds were walking along by the side of the sea and said, "You see that rabbit hole in the dune there? So if I keep if I get my crook, I can hit a stone into that rabbit hole in just 3 strokes." What do you say? And so the two great international shepherds games were born, and they both use the grass and sort of can never stop using the grass. Of course, there are coconut matting and there are indoor facilities for practicing cricket and so on. But I sort of love that, and I'd sort of love a story that somehow wrapped itself around it. A couple of shepherds from the different periods kind of crossing over or something. I also like the story of what was the surname? Elliot, I think it might have been, who dragged his sister into bowling at him because he, as so many cricketers did in the days when it was somehow considered quite wrongly to be a man's game only. They're poor sisters. And indeed, I got my sister to bowl attles at me sometimes. And he got her to bowl at him. This is in the 18th century, late 18th, early 19th century, I think. When bowling was underarm and it was flicked from the armpit, as you probably know, you can do amazing leg spin if you do that because your thumb really snaps the ball
Good
around.
kitchen game, actually. Good kitchen.
Yeah,
game,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Exactly. Yeah. But she had a wide skirt, and she couldn't do a normal underarm, and you couldn't really do that. So she started to do this, to bowl round arm and then sort of round like that. And he really liked what happened to the ball when she did this. So he played for England, and he started to bowl, and the umpire no-balled him, and he bowled again like that, and he was no-balled again. And after 3 no-balls, he stalked off the pitch and apparently got onto his horse and rode away in a temper, and eventually made such a fuss they allowed it. So again, the story of this girl, I think, would be very interesting, who invented bowling. I think it would be a very pleasing story. I don't know. I mean, cricket and films. There's you probably know the Terence Rattigan Last Test film with Jack Warner. Have you ever seen that? Yeah. Robert Morley. Robert Morley played a character like me, a big fat sort of writer who loves cricket but can't play it. Has a sort of sentimental view of it. And Jack Warner plays a kind of Jack Hobbs figure, a hard professional who's come up through the game and made a heck of a name for himself, but is always a bit of an outsider and certainly, not part of the sort of snobbish centre that cricket unfortunately has had for so long. And that's a good film. It is genuinely a sort of pleasant film. It's very dated, but
is that about the 53 Ashes?
Yeah, it's around that time. Yes, yeah. It's not actually about it. It's just about this particular player's last test. And in fact, a bit in a Bradman way, he doesn't make a great century in his last test, and he's very sort of charming about it. But otherwise, there haven't been much. There's a lot of writing, a lot of short stories, a lot of wonderful comic writing, and terrific memoirs and other things. But film and cricket, I don't know.
There's been a couple of Indian films. There's Lagan, which is about 4.5 hours long, and there's also they made one recently about the 1983 India World Cup win. They've recorded it, and I think it's been out about a couple of months. Some of our members have actually seen it, in fact, and they played it. They had actors playing, Madan Lal and Kapil Dev and people like that.
I don't
know if it's any good.
List of guests here. I see the name Richard Harris. Is that the same Richard who wrote Inside Edge?
Could be.
Outside Edge.
Yeah,
is it?
It could well be.
Can you nod and put your thumb up if it is you? Maybe it's another Richard Harris.
Oh, sorry, on our club.
Oh, it's another Richard Harris. Because if you remember Richard Harris, not the actor, but there was a Richard Harris, the writer, who wrote that series. Do you remember Outside Edge? It was with Robert. That was really
Paul
good.
Eddington. Was Paul Eddington in that?
I think he was, yeah. And it's centered around the kind of rivalries and resentments and so
village
on.
Cricket, wasn't it?
In a village cricket with its pavilion and its,
Yeah, that's true. That was quite good, yeah.
I suppose
that's
one
a good
of the
answer anyway. You've got lots of choice there, John.
Great question, John. I was just one of the problems is if you film action, sports action always looks a bit, I don't know, it doesn't look that convincing. It's very hard to get the action right, isn't it? And I think so you have to have the drama off the field almost, and the action on the field has to be a bit subsidiary. Anyway, let's move on.
There's a quick thing just to say there is an ironic reason for that, which is quite interesting, which is we are used to seeing sport live on video cameras with particular positions. But when you make a movie, you can get the movie camera in on the ground, right amongst the players. It ought to be more realistic, but we regard it as less realistic because it doesn't remind us of the sport we actually.
There's a great clip actually of Jack Hobbs going past W.G. Grace's record of hundreds. I think it's his 125th hundred or something. And a cameraman, he was in Somerset, Taunton. A cameraman was sent to record the moment when Hobbs scored his 125th 100, and he got to about 94, and then he got stuck and didn't get any runs for a few overs. And when he actually scored his 100th run, the cameraman missed it. So he'd gone all the way down to Taunton to film this great moment, and he missed it. So they had to reenact it afterwards. And, you know, so the camera went right up close to Jack Hobbs standing at the wicket doing a rather kind of mannered, like, pull for one round the corner. And it just looked absolutely ridiculous.
Exactly. There you are. Sorry, I was interrupting you there.
No, it's a really interesting point. It's a really interesting point about why it doesn't look so realistic. Right, Jacob, you're the second person with a question this evening.
Jacob, are you on sound?
Sorry there, Stephen. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great listening to you, Stephen. So my question is quite straightforward. Which is your favourite, cricket player, I guess? And if it's English, I guess you can go for an England one and one overseas one. Who would they be and the reasons for it? It'd be great to know. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I was of the generation for whom the both of them actually was one of the absolute highlights of my late teens, early 20s. And it was very hard to explain to those who weren't around at the time and who hadn't watched England being so absolutely flabby and useless for a few years to see this astounding achievement over 3 tests in particular, Edgbaston, Old Trafford and Headingley, of course. And that was a huge thing. And despite the fact that I probably don't agree with everything that Ian Botham thinks about life and politics, I can't be so creepy and pathetic as to deny him his place in my internal pantheon as a truly great hero, as just a remarkable man and a remarkable athlete and competitor. And I suppose the other one, I would have said this even if it weren't for the tragic news of 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and that would be Shane Warne. I was lucky enough to know him a little, and he was everything everybody always said he was, just a delightful larrikin, but also a thoughtful and intelligent man, and very kind. Scattered, the worst replier to invitations that you could ever have. But again, watching him at his height, he changed cricket. And I suppose I remember, I think it was George Melly, I saw doing a documentary on Louis Armstrong. And he just, while talking, said, George Melly, there are a lot of people use the word genius and we always fight over what it means. He said, but my interpretation of what a genius is it's someone who enters a field and when they leave that field, the field is different. And I would say that applied to Shane Warne, very much so. And Michael Holding is another one I admire enormously. I admired him hugely when he was a bowler because of the sheer beauty of his run-up and action. I mean, it was just the most Whispering Death, all those wonderful nicknames he had. And the knowledge that he was so intelligent and had such a sort of broad, all-round approach to life, which he still has. He had degrees and he was also a runner and he just clearly was someone who whatever he brought to cricket, he brought to everything. And then in recent years, watching the program he made about racism in cricket, which was heartbreaking and brilliant in its passion, intelligence, fury, everything that it had to be. So I suppose I'd kind of put Michael Holding and Shane Warne up as my overseas players. Probably, but there are so many greats, and that's the beauty. It's a bit like asking what your favorite film is. You answer with one movie one day, and you'll probably give another answer the next day.
Of course.
What you have actually said is 3 bowlers there, haven't you? If you think of both of them as primarily a bowler,
I always remember the story of Fred Truman toiling one very hot July day and getting, 1 wicket for 60 runs. And he was walking back. He'd been put into bowl again by the captain. And he was heard to mutter, "Last fucking bowler to be knighted was Francis fucking Drake."
Brilliant.
It's true. There were, it was almost no bowler was ever recognised in honours or captaincy. It was almost as if the bowlers were the servant class of cricket and the batsmen were the sort of lords and masters, and that's how it somehow seemed, didn't it? That was in the days when cricket captains
still does seem like that.
Yeah, I think
I got the violin out again, Yoz.
Though the late departed Brea Tar Pits was a good captain, of course, and there were a few others, but not many. You're right, for England there weren't many.
Great, Jacob, excellent.
Thank you.
Martin is going to ask the next question. Good evening, Martin.
Good evening. Thank you, Stephen. Very enjoyable this evening. My question is about, I suppose, about your career, and in all your achievements, which are many, as we know. Is there any one that gives you the most sort of pride or enjoyment when you look back on it?
It's a really interesting question, and again, it might be one that I would answer differently on different days. But in acting terms, I'm pretty much a realist. I'm aware that I don't get offered the parts that Timothée Chalamet has just turned down, or that Brad Pitt turned down. That if I do get a part in a movie or a TV show, it'll be a character. It might be a villain. It might be some sort of oily, pompous arse, which is quite close to reality. But there was an occasion in the early to mid-90s when producers came to me and asked if I would play Oscar Wilde in a film about his life, a genuine lead role, as it were, and a part that was more than just a character role in a guest sort of capacity. And it was a terrifying and extraordinary and exciting role because Wilde meant so much to me when I was growing up. His use of language and everything thrilled me, as well as all kinds of other things I discovered about him as I aged and realized what an extraordinary figure and what a remarkable life it was. So the chance to do that was just extraordinary. And I could have sort of closed my acting career and said, well, that's fine. I've done something like that. And now I'm happy, as I am, to do more character roles. But in the end, the thing that most satisfies me in terms of real fulfillment and a sense of joy is writing, is it's a sort of long form writing with books and novels, and I've done a few of those now over the years, and they're the hardest work. They're the most dispiriting sometimes when you wake up and you realize you've got the tyranny of the blinking cursor and the blank screen and this knowledge you've got to write something, and you just force yourself to. It can be utterly disheartening, but then when the juices are flowing, it's an extraordinary feeling, like nothing I know. You know how much is written in sport about the zone and being there, and that strange mixture, that almost a counterintuitive mixture of concentration and relaxation that is necessary to be in that zone for the batsman to see the ball as big as a football, as slow as, and just to be able to move into it and somehow to be at one with it, all his and her gestures and motions, and it's the same on stage. Sometimes you're a bit, if you concentrate without being relaxed, you're forced. And you see that in sport. You see it with batters and bowlers. You see it. They're trying too hard. They're concentrating, but they aren't relaxed. On the other hand, if they're relaxed without concentrating, they're all over the place as well. But there is this strange magic thing. They call it sometimes a flow state, or as you say, being in the zone. And we're used to hearing that about sport, but it is actually true in other things, including writing. You suddenly, if you prime the pump enough, if you just write nonsense and stick at it and refuse to get up and pace about or give up and start watching television, if you just keep going, then there will be a click in your brain and you will suddenly go, okay. And then 3 hours will pass and you think it's only 3 minutes. You're in the magic state, but you can't call it at will any more than a batter can summon up form and technique at will. You're a good enough batsman to play for England, say, but that for the last 3 matches you've scratched away, and how will it come back? It's that question, and it's one of the reasons we love sport, and one of the reasons it's so you can so translate it and transfer it to other fields of human activity, because the extremity and the sort of binary nature of yes, win or lose, in or out of sport is so clear that it makes a great metaphor for lots of other things we do. And that's why a lot of sports people, I think, have secondary careers where they go around lecturing business people. I remember the first time I came across this was I was quite friendly with Will Carling when he was captain of England rugby, and he was just chatting about these huge companies he would go and visit and the fees he would demand from them. I said, well, what do you say to them? I said, well, I just talk about how you captain England. I said, and they want to pay you for that. I said, well, he said, well, yes, but basically it's a day out or at least a sort of afternoon off for the working staff, who some of them are rugby fans, and, but he sort of, in the end, a lot of it is nonsense. Just talk about, how does a rugby captain tell someone from Anderson Consulting how to run their business? Anyway, sorry, it's a complicated answer to a very good question, Martin. And I think the full answer would be writing. Yeah.
And do you have a particular time of day when you find it flowing?
Yeah, very early. Very early. I mean, most of us, I think, come to a realization that we are by nature owls or larks, and I try to force myself to be an owl in all kinds of different ways, and it doesn't suit me. But the moment I'm easy about it and get up, I get up at 5 a.m, and straight down there, and I find my mind is clearer and my energy sort of just better.
Cool.
Okay, I think we're changing tack slightly now. Ian Wigston, good evening to you, Ian. What's your question?
Hi, Ian.
Stephen.
Simons, hello. Stephen, great to have you with us. Stephen, in your Cowdrey lecture last year, you spoke very eloquently and movingly about cricket's historic capacity for change. Do you see any correlation between England's willingness to change and our current position at the bottom of the World Test Championship? And the second part is, what lessons from your successful advocacy in mental health might you suggest be translated for the good of the game?
Well, those are terrific questions, Ian. And in terms of my point about the change in cricket, cricket has always changed, and it's always changed in ways that have met resistance, certainly in my lifetime. And it's pretty clear looking at the history of the game before my lifetime too. But I'm old enough to remember when the one-day game was being doubted, and this Gillette Cup, what's that about? And Sunday leagues and so forth. And then I also remember people moaning about the fact that cigarettes was supporting cricket, and other people moaning that people were moaning about it. Say, what's wrong with that? The cigarettes, they give good money to the game and don't make all this fuss. But now, of course, it seems absurd, the idea that you would have you would have John Player cigarettes sponsoring a game, kids around the place, and that change is obvious. And then there were the changes in so many different other forms of the game, and in the structure as well, and in the modes and formats of the game, all of which were met with furious resistance. And I'm not saying they were all good moves necessarily, but most of them have worked and now look necessary and a natural part of how cricket has evolved. It is an always evolving game. It's part of its riches, seems to me, has been that it like music or cuisine, it has its flavors around the world. And it may have started in one country, England, supposedly in Hampshire, and, Broad Halfpenny Down and all that. But I can remember when I was reviewing books for the Listener, when I was it was the first job I had really after university. And Russell Twisk, the editor, said, we get a lot of cricket books in, and no one ever reviews them. Would you like to review them? So I got this huge heap of cricket books in 1 year, and Don Mosey, known as the Alderman, who used to commentate on TMS, had written one, and he wrote. I'm sure he was a lovely chap, but he was of a different age, and he wrote about, when I talk about cricket, I mean real cricket, which is cricket in the shadow of a church spire in an English field. And I remember thinking, that is so exactly wrong. Real cricket is on a beach in the West Indies, or on stickball in the slums of Bombay, or on coconut matting in Sri Lanka, or in a park in Adelaide. accolade. It's everywhere. It's however people want to use the bat and ball game with its vague structure of runs and wickets, and however you adapt the laws for your particular circumstances on your beach and with your 1 wicket or 2 wickets, whatever you might be able to have. And that's why cricket is glorious. If it was only a game that existed with a chestnut tree and teas and the whole English thing, then it would be a historic and slightly embarrassing and weird thing, a bit like Morris dancing, perhaps, with no disrespect to Morris dancing. But cricket is so much greater than that. And like, as I say, it's closer to food, comedy, and music. The way when you visit a country, you see the different flavors of food, the different ways that something simple like tomatoes and chilies and potatoes and lamb might be done in different ways around the world. Similarly, the different ways, a bat, a ball, a wicket and some piece of ground, the different ways they can express the joy of cricket. And then, of course, it comes together in the professional sphere. And there you do want standards of, curation of the grounds, as they say in Australia, groundskeeping and so on has to be, reasonable. You don't want the game to be dangerous. But nonetheless, it changes about, and change and evolution is everything to it. And indeed, it's the reason we're so proud and we love the game is that it's so popular around the world. And yes, its footprint was a colonial one. We can't deny that it was where the empire went, there went cricket. But that's the story of the revenge of the ruled, of the colonized, is that they beat us at the game. And it always underwrites an international match, is that almost parricidal thing of the children of the game. We, the fathers, came and gave it to them, and the children are getting their own back, and they're defeating us at it. And there's a smile to be had from that. And if you're British, you understand it. Of course you do. God, if I were West Indian, how much I would want to beat the English. If I were Indian, how much I would want to beat the English. And that's a sort of part of it that's very strong. So we always know, talking about the England side, and it's the change that's going on there at the moment, and that's a change in coaching, team management, and all the rest of it. It's, as Ashley's gone, and all the various other changes are taking place, and we're doing very badly. And that's how I'm used to seeing England. In fact, we did so well over. Sorry, there's someone with a leaf blower outside. I don't know if it's bothering you, but we did so well in the Ashes through the early thousands and the teens. And we did so well in 2020 when we were hosting during the pandemic. We won most of our matches there. I still think of England as being rather on top of the game, but then I have to remind myself that things move on so fast that we are now down in the bottom. But I don't think that is a crisis for English cricket. I think, generally speaking, it's in a pretty healthy position. If once we get through the pandemic, we can take stock again and see how many young people are coming through. But it's all about opportunities in England, where the facilities that you see in private schools are so astonishingly good. The kind of schools I went to, I have to admit, where you had a professional. We had a professional, literally a professional cricketer teaching the boys how to play. I mean, can you imagine that in an inner city school? I mean, it's absurd how unequal the game has been in that respect, in terms of access to the facilities that are needed to improve the nets and the old wise cricketers showing you actions and caring about how good you are at the game. I mean, I've been involved with the MCC Foundation, where we've tried to say, well, look, here in this town, just take a random town, Northamptonshire. Well, in Northamptonshire, you've got rugby. Rugby school is nearby, and they have the most amazing facilities. But for 12 weeks of the summer holidays, they're not even being used. So they've got to be open to people from Northamptonshire. And that's what we've been trying to do, is trying to make sure that all these astounding facilities are not closed off and only used for the privileged few, but that girls and boys from all kinds of backgrounds who are interested in cricket get a chance to be shown the game and to find out if they have a talent and to light that spark in them that will improve the game in every sense. And we loved what our England team did in the early part of this century, beating us at the Ashes, but there were 2/3 of them were privately educated, and it's not to take away from their splendor and how talented they are and how wonderfully they did, and it's not their fault that their parents sent them to private schools, but it does tell us something. Without it's not about being woke or anything else. It's about using the best talent that we've got, and so that's an important side of the change in England, is to keep pushing, it seems to me, at making sure that facilities are available. We know cricket grounds and so on have disappeared from cities more and more over there was the Peter May Foundation, which tried to do something about that when John Major was Prime Minister. I remember going to 10 Downing Street, and we would all try and think of ways to get schools not to sell their cricket grounds. But how could they resist? Well, get millions for their cricket grounds, and that would allow them to get science lab or something. It's a tricky business, but one keeps pushing for this. And I know words like diversity or whatever always sound as if they belong to a political culture war, but whatever word it is you want to use, a variegation in the population from whom we draw our cricketers. It needs to be everybody in Britain, and that's true around the world, of course. But it is truer in India and in Australia that it is a more open game, and that the academy systems they've had in Australia have been quite inspiring for people like Shane Warne when he was arriving in cricket as a young lad. So there's lots we can do there, I reckon. Sorry, it's a long answer, but and sounded a bit political or something, but it didn't mean it to be.
Thank you.
Great, excellent. Right, we are going to hear from Richard Harris now, I think, with the next question. Richard.
Hello, yes, Stephen. I'm not the Inside Edge author, I'm afraid.
You've got a nice bugle above your door, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again, Simon?
You've got a bugle above your door, have you?
I do. Is
that a yard of ale?
I have a bugle from a Kentish charity shop, which I used to summon my children for dinner. Unfortunately, I can't really get a note out of it, so they go hungry. But but now it's got pride of place on this carom board behind me.
Very good.
But I'm talking about public schools. I must admit, a Westminster boy, and just to confirm your point about public school privilege, we had Mike Brea as a teacher at Westminster when I was there in the early 80s, and he didn't even teach cricket. He was actually a philosophy teacher.
Yes. I can absolutely.
He used to wander by the nets, and we would pester him. What was it like facing Michael Holding? What was it, this, that, and the other? We always wanted about fast bowling, and he would say a few choice words of wisdom, and then wander off to teach a philosophy class. And that's how spoilt we were. We just thought that these professionals wandered about.
It must have put a bit of pressure on whoever the master was who actually who was responsible for cricket. He must have felt really.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Absolutely, it was.
But I taught cricket at the prep school with Alan Hampshire, who was the brother of John Hampshire. So that was quite exciting for me. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Oh, right, no, not at all. Well, I mean, I didn't open the bowling like P.G. Woodhouse did for Dulwich College, I'm afraid. But I troubled the first 11 occasionally. But I have to say, forgive this preamble. I will come to my question, but I'm a musician, actually. I'm obsessed with Wagner, Tristan in particular. I'm an atheist who's mad about Christopher Hitchens. I love watching snooker on television, and I love watching magicians like Darren Brown. So basically, for 30 years, you're the older brother I never had. I just have to get that out there. All right, so this is a truly wondrous moment for me, Stephen, to speak to. So thank you very much indeed. My question is, I've got a quintillion questions as a result, really, but my one question by the rules of the game is, if you had to choose one book or even one article of great cricket writing, your favourite cricket writing, Jim Swanson, Carter, C.L.R. James, even our great Simon Hughes said, what would it be?
I loved reading Cardus when I was a boy, and of course he was also great on music, as you know. But I think the one that changed my mind so much about cricket was Beyond the Boundary, the C.L.R. James masterpiece. Right. an extraordinary book about growing up in West Indies under the yoke of British imperialism, I suppose you'd say. But like a lot of his generation, Leary Constantine is another good example. There was a bigness of spirit, a hugeness of spirit in James and in Constantine, which meant that they didn't reject out of hand everything that came from the white master country, Britain. He embraced Shakespeare and cricket and said, these are world cultural ideas, Shakespeare and cricket, for example, just to mention two things that come so obviously from England. And he said, rather than us turning our back on them because they come from a culture that in many ways we hate and resent, we should recognize that they are bigger than those cultures and that we should embrace them and be part of them. And I think that's an important thing. I mean, it's easy for me to say, I don't come from a subjugated race in that way, but I do think that attitude that has colored a lot of West Indian cricket and West Indian cultural history over the years has been a very important one. And James to this day still repays reading, I think, because we haven't escaped some of the angers and resentments that take place in race and post-colonialism, as we know. And we're, it's very much a hot button issue today, even perhaps more than in his day. So I would recommend anyone to go and read C.L.R. James, and because of the magnanimity as well of spirit, and as well as the acuity. And he was a Marxist, for heaven's sake, but he was like, a non-sanctimonious Marxist, which is quite a rare thing.
Thank you so much. I think the quote, "What do they know of cricket who only cricket know?" I think is one of the great quotes of all time.
Absolutely right. It's actually a reshaping of the Kipling. What do they of England know that only England know?
Right.
And yeah, right. You don't know your own country until you've been abroad. You don't know cricket exactly unless you've seen them. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you,
Richard. Well, I'm glad, Richard, we made your evening. Or this
club.
My
mother always says about cricket, I know enough to know that I don't know very much, which is another quite a good way of putting it, really.
And while on the subject of Wagner and cricket, there was one great England cricketer with whom I would occasionally have lunch and talk Wagner. You probably can guess who that was, Simon.
Can.
Bob Willis.
Bob Willis, yeah. I was going to say Michael Henderson, but yeah.
Dylan, but he also loved Wagner as much as Dylan. Yeah.
Never knew that.
Yeah.
He was great friends with Michael Henderson, wasn't he? And that's where he got the Wagner influence.
Absolutely, from. And a lot of opera singers. We would lunch with Robert Tier quite often, who was a wonderful mimer, which I'm sure Richard will remember his mimer from Siegfried.
Right.
Anyway,
how are you doing for time, Stephen? Are you all right for another 10 minutes?
I'm fine if you are. It's only 1:30 in.
Okay. 10 more minutes? You got 10 more minutes?
Sure, 10 minutes would be great. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so we got time for a couple more questions then. A nice short question from Paul Morley. Good evening, Paul.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
That cannot be done.
You never know. Give me a chance. Stephen, great to hear from you. Your passion, the way you speak about the game, your enthusiasm is infectious, and it's wonderful to listen to. It's really been exciting and great to be here. I think, if I'm right in saying, one of your other great passions in life is opera. I think you just referred to it just there. And I think I'm very much an opera novice. I think I've only been once, but I had the fortune of crossing you on the stairs at the Royal Opera House at the Barber of Seville about 7 years ago. It's probably far more of a highlight for me than it was for you.
Did you see who I was with? Did you notice who I was with?
Well, I didn't know, but you can tell me.
I was with. It was just quite a perhaps unlikely person to go to see Rossini opera with. Rufus Wainwright.
Okay. Right, no, I didn't. I noticed you crossing me on the stairs, but didn't notice Rufus. But anyway, great evening that was. But I guess the question, a bit like John's before about film and cricket, is I don't think, if I'm right in saying, there's never been a cricket-themed opera. When you think about all the wonderful vagaries that the game has, could there be an opportunity for you and Tim Rice to collaborate and get your and if you think of Shane, you just mentioned Shane earlier, and what a great topic he would be. You have the heroism, the genius, the artistry, scandal, and of course the tragedy in the end.
There is a musical. There was a musical made about.
There was a
James
musical,
Bond,
I think. Yeah. I think you're right. Back in Australia. In 15
that's
years
right.
Ago. But now things have moved on. So could that be a project for you, Stephen? That's the question.
It's an interesting thought. I mean, the stagecraft is obviously the major issue, isn't it? As to how you manage to get any sort of drama and excitement of the kind you get in cricket on a stage, whether you revolve it, whether you're in the point of view of a batsman and then you, as it were, cut to an aria from the point of view of a bowler. It's a question, of course, about opera too. Opera's found it quite difficult to change. I mean, Puccini in the early part of the 20th century, and then Benjamin Britten. But Benjamin Britten set a lot of his operas in the past, and therefore in a world that was sort of, you could believe it was operatic. Michael Tippett, the composer, managed to set them in the present day, but then the lyrics always sound so peculiar when English, and then modern. I don't know if you've seen things like the Knock Garden, the Tippett opera. It's very unsettling somehow. And there are ones like Poulenc's collaboration with Cocteau. It's called The Human Voice, La Voix Humaine, which is a woman on a telephone, which is great to see in an opera. Actually seeing things like televisions, telephones, computers, offices in an opera is still very jarring to most people, because we think of opera as being almost like a Baroque building or a cathedral, as being something that belongs entirely to the past. And if people happen to like it, then they go and visit the past by seeing an opera. Whereas to the great opera writers, Verdi, Wagner, Puccini, Britten, it was the most urgent and modern art form that you could have. It combined all the art forms, as Wagner called it, the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. It was dance, it was mask, it was acting, it was singing, it was poetry, it was set design, it was politics, it was mythology, it was every single aspect of human life thrown into a world of opera. And those of us who love cricket, without being too absurd about it, think that there are moments when cricket seems to exemplify almost everything it is to be human, all the aspects of aggression and defense, and of tactics and strategy, of thought and imagination and creativity and teamwork and individuality, all the separate, belonging to a team and being apart from a team, being separate, all these things that are so crucial to the nature of humanity and have so interested playwrights and others over the centuries. You would feel is perfect for an opera, and is therefore cricket is the perfect subject. But well, now you've said it. It's never occurred to me before to have a cricket opera, but now you've said it.
You can get up next time you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. That's your topic.
If it was a musical by Leslie Brickus and Anthony Newley, it would be called "How's that?" exclamation. But an opera probably ought to be more subtle.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Okay, Sam O'Brien.
Are you on mute? Oh, there he is.
There we go.
Mythos. Oh, yes.
Light reading here for me as well.
Top man.
Echoing everybody's appreciation for you coming on. My question is about when you have deadlines, lots of deadlines. I work at a university, student stuff have a lot of deadlines. What are your processes to remain focused and calm when things are coming in? You've got things like commitments like this, you're in LA. How do you stay calm? And my follow-up, cricket related, when has cricket made you feel the best? And I have to ask, what's your favorite Harry Potter book?
Good questions. They're all round, Sam. I mean, the most important one is the first one, I suppose, because it's one that we all face and we all wonder about, and we all remember from school days what one used to call an essay crisis. This feeling of, oh, if I don't finish that essay, it's got to cover 3 sides or 2.5 sides, and I've got 2 hours this evening, but I don't want to do it. I want to go and play in the corridor or whatever, and that awful feeling of a weight of like lead leaking into your stomach, the knowledge that you have a deadline, you have a duty, you have copy to file if you're Simon, probably one of the Simons, or you have an essay to write, you have something to deliver, you have, I have it all the time. It is, I can remember when I put the last full stop on my last exam answer at university, thinking, there, I'll never have that awful feeling again, little realizing that this had just been a tiny rehearsal for the real problems of life. And anybody who works in an office and has promised their team leader that they will deliver this or that, or upload these and send everybody these attachments, and have this thing. How do I concentrate? How do I focus enough to do this? And I don't know the answer. At some point in my life, having been completely a victim of organization, laziness, fear of getting things done, I discovered a joy in work. And I don't know where it came from. What I described earlier about getting up early and sitting in front of the computer and sort of screaming until something worked in the brain is a kind of daily occurrence for me. And it is a mixture of agony and ecstasy. But I somehow discovered, Noel Coward had a sign above his desk that simply said, work is more fun than fun. And if for some reason you're lucky enough for that to be the case, then of course it isn't an effort. But the problem is, it tends to be an insuperable effort to produce the work, to focus, to concentrate, if you don't love it. It's bad enough if you do love it, because you want to pay it full service and you want to be as good as you can be. And so you sweat about how hard you have to do it, but at least you love it. But if you're doing something you don't love, I mean, I do get, it sounds so graceless, but I do get at least 10 a week, people sending me manuscripts, asking me to comment on a book they've written. And it's agony, because if I say no, it just seems so mean. Why? It's a small amount of work for you to look. I've written this whole thing. All I'm asking you to do is look through it. You don't even have to read the whole thing and then just say a few words, and you think, and so I have those every day. I have this file with asterisks on it, so it always goes to the top of my file list on my computer and phone, and it's got things to read now, and it's got asterisks all over it. And it's just every day I look at it and go, oh. So when this is over, for example, I will go and have a quick lunch, and I will sit outside, because it is fortunately about 28 degrees today, and I will swipe through on my iPad or whatever and probably manage 3 books. And, usually they're about mental health or something. And so, to turn them down is more than just a kind of unkind. It's like, well, they seem to think they have an important things to say about mental health, and at least I can do is read it and so on. But anyway, so all I'm saying is I do get the same thing that everybody gets, the work crisis of, a feeling. And I suppose the pleasure of having got through it, the pleasure of getting through to the other side. You fight through the wood and it's tangled and you get scratched with the briars and it's miserable and you think, I'm lost and I'll never get out. Then you see light and you're through it. And my goodness, the feeling of pride is superb. Which is my favorite Harry Potter novel? I suppose the first one, because it really was extraordinary in the mid-90s. My agent just called me up and said, oh, do you want to do an audiobook? It's a children's book. And the publishers say that you'll probably like it, and they're very keen for you. The author is a new author, and she quite likes the idea of you reading it. So I thought, well, a children's book, that's pretty straightforward. The cat saw the dog got on the bicycle, the dog fell off, the cat licked the dog, the end. There you are. Children's story, all done in a morning. And of course, it turned out that it was this book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and it was a proper adult-sized book. But it was a marvelous fun to watch the whole phenomenon. She says, I said it like this, I refuse to believe I was quite so patronizing. But I said after it, I said, I think this book is really good, and I think it'll be a great success. And she said, well, thank you. As a matter of fact, she said, I've already written a second one. And she says, I said, good for you.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
But anyway, yeah, so I think the first one's my favorite, just for that reason. And I tell this story, and you might have heard it before, so forgive me if you have. But she, from the very beginning, she wanted the books to be unabridged, uncondensed, because she felt with the audiobooks in particular, if children were listening to the audiobook, they would also be following maybe the physical book with their fingers on the line, and there shouldn't be diversions or changes or abridgments. In the second one, I think it was the Chamber of Secrets, there was a phrase where Harry says, or she says, Harry pocketed it. You see, I still can't say it. I put an extra syllable in. Harry pocketed it. Harry pocketed it. Anyway, I was doing this with it. I was going, Harry pocketed it. Oh, God. And she wasn't in that particular day on the second one. So I called her up. I said, Jo, I've got this phrase, Harry pocketed it. I just can't say it. And would it be all right if I changed it to Harry put it in his pocket? Because I can say that. She said, no. And what's more, there were how many more? 5, 6 more Harry Potter novels, and in every one she included the phrase "Harry pocketed it." It was a little bomb she left for me in every book. So that was but what was the middle question? I forget what that was.
You can I'll crack on, let the other guys ask their questions because I've taken up enough here.
Oh right, yeah. But anyway, thank you for yours.
No worries.
Thank you, Sam.
Okay. Ajay Jadeja is the commentator's equivalent. If you try and say Ajay Jadeja quickly, you just can't say it. Greggy got stumped with that a few times, and he kept saying Ajay Jadeja is disappointed, and he just couldn't get it out. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Well, we have got 2 more questions, but I know Stephen's running out of time. So
right, so last 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, last 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I'll try and answer more quickly this time.
Okay. So
good evening,
go on,
Stephen.
Rob.
Oh, that's right. Rob. Good evening, Stephen. Just wanted to say thanks for popping on. If you were creating a Stephen Fry Ultimate 11, who would be in it?
Oh my goodness me! Well, again, you see one's views change. It's so hard to ignore current players, and so you look at the Baba Alis, the Babas and the Kohlis or whoever's doing really well at the moment, and you think, how can you leave them out? And I would certainly have Shane Warne in. Obviously, we've mentioned him. I would probably have Ian Botham in as an all-rounder, although there are other choices you could have from around the world, and I appreciate that, and I mustn't be too Anglo-centric about it. How could you not have
Holding? You got
Holding. I mean, Holding, Marshall. All those extraordinary West Indian fast bowlers, and the Curtly Ambrose and the Walsh. But yeah, I would probably say Michael Holding, just because of my pleasure of having him in there. So we need another fast bowler, and I'd probably go for Glen Mcgrath, to be honest. It's just the sheer beauty of the rhythm and accuracy of him to watch was unbelievable. And the fact that he had that gift, which so few bowlers have, is that he never looked as if he was trying to get a wicket with that ball. He just looked as if he was trying to bowl brilliantly, and therefore the wickets came, And of course, it's a lot more complicated in his mind, but you always feel there are too many bowlers who are trying to get wickets all with each ball. And somehow he just knew that if he just laid it there time and time again, and occasionally the smallest variation.
That was it.
It's just magnificent to watch. For batters, who would we have? Well, my goodness me. Gordon Greenwich got to be one of the openers, I feel. Again, this betrays my generation, but in my memory, he was just about the finest opener you could have. Would you have
Tendulkar or Lara?
Well, I was going to say, yes, probably Tendulkar would have to be, wouldn't it? I mean, I remember that match when he was 17 and he came over to England and saw him then, and we all turned and said, I think we're going to see that fellow again, aren't we? That sort of talent is just blissful to watch. I can't go through all 11, and I'll make a fool of myself if I try, but who would be the captain? There's the question. Who?
Shane Warne.
Yeah, maybe. He wasn't a bad captain. He was a fine cricketing brain. Of course he was. Yeah. I like the fact you want a bowler to be the captain, don't you? Definitely.
I bloody do. Quite right.
Could you have Mullarathan and Shane Warne in? I think you probably could. Yeah. I mean,
you don't need many batsmen. If you've got McGrath, Holding, Ambrose,
holding
Ward and
War
Murray. They bowl them out for about 20.
They just bowl them all out.
Playing
Exactly.
it Rawalpindi or not?
But yeah, I mean, if you talk to my parents' generation, they'll all be talking about Wally Hammond and things like that. And of course, you can't help but there's a sort of focus, and then there's a sort of corona that goes over a few people from before your time. But generally speaking, you tend to look at the ones around.
You haven't mentioned Bradman, of course, but maybe.
But obviously Bradman. I mean, that goes without saying. Well, I mean, it's so mysterious, isn't it, when you watch film of him? I suppose with one thing you notice is his footwork. Really, he did use his feet in extraordinary, quick ways. That and he was short. I mean, I always say this about my appalling inability to swing a golf club in any rhythmic way, and my inability to bat is that my levers are too long, and therefore, a kind of 0.25% error in a long lever results in a 20% error at the end. Whereas if you're very short, you have less of the problem. And it's interesting how many fine batsmen have been below average height, isn't it? I mean, really, Brian Lara and Tendulkar and Bradman and others are all short, and there are not many great tall batters. It seems
true. Peterson's a rarity. Good. Okay, great. Last question. Is it Will?
Yes, final question, Will.
There we go. Yes, it is me. Stephen, it's lovely to hear you. And I echo everyone's words. It's been really good to hear you. Just a very quick one. So, Cricket World Cup final at Lord's, the final day of the 2005 Ashes, and also the Headingley Test match at 2019, Ben Stokes. If you had to rank them 1, 2, 3, if you could, what would be that order?
Well, I mean, that August 2019, was it? Yes.
Yeah. 2019, yeah.
I think it was August the 24th.
Yeah.
It might be. Yeah.
The Sunday, I think, if I remember.
I mean, I mentioned this word before, but for sheer glory, in the story of that innings, as you can remember, the day before, he had been so slow to score to stay overnight at the wicket, and then when on came Johnny Bairstow, and it started to open up, and so it had a shape like any great innings, and it had an impossible ask that became more and more preposterous, and then things like Nathan Lyon's terrifying miss of the run out, and I mean, it had so many. It's really the cricket gods just decided to bless England for that match, and to bless cricket in a way, because it brought it, it just thrilled everybody who watched it. So as a sheer moment, and sport is so much about moments. It's about build-ups, but for sheer moment, I think that really has to be, because I was actually in Edinburgh. I was on stage for some part of it. I was rushing off stage, looking at I'd managed to get an iPad with a signal attached in the wings. So I was going off, and I was even looking in the wings while I was on stage. And the crew were going up and down like that. Now, for all the test matches we won, and even the World Cup, obviously the last super over of the World Cup was amazing. It was sort of unfair. I mean, I actually felt for New Zealand. I sort of thought, God, that was just so. It was because it was about the rules of the tournament rather than the laws of cricket to win. And whereas in Ben's case, it was sheer will, talent, guts, determination, all of that. And so that made it somehow more remarkable. And the fact that it made everybody watching it turn and look at each other and burst out laughing with joy. There was the one where he knelt down and whipped it round. I mean, that 6. I mean, that you just gasp with joy when you see someone doing that. And I think it was a bit like, I remember my brother reminding me the other day, he said, do you remember when we were young? He said, I was a bit older, so I could occasionally go into a pub. He said, if you heard somebody in the early and mid 60s talk about the Beatles, then you joined in the conversation, whether it was in a bus queue, in a shop, in a pub. It was an open conversation for everybody. You could all join in because the Beatles were the subject. And for a few days after Ben's innings, it was the same thing. If you heard someone in a hotel breakfast room or something talking about it, you'd go, yeah, and did you see that shot? They'd go, oh. It brought people together, which the both of them Headingley Test did as well. And of course, the World Cup was a great moment, and we did very, very well. But we squeaked through by the rules of the super over and who was the batting side. I can't. What was the ridiculous rule?
Boundary is a boundary.
That one there. So if New Zealand had won on those terms, we would have felt cheated. The Kiwis were graceful enough never really to express that, which is typical of them in their class. But that's my answer.
Great, brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. We must let you go and enjoy the LA sunshine. Just tell us what's coming up for you. Books, films. What's the next thing we've got to look out for?
Well, this thing, The Dropout, that I've been working on is coming to a close in the next few weeks. Which is on Hulu. I'm not sure where they're showing it on. Is it on Sky Atlantic or something
Disney
like that?
Plus. It's on Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, of course. Yeah. You have to. It's so confusing because Fox and Disney and Hulu are all owned by all Disney. Everything's owned by Disney now, it seems. Anyway, so there's that coming out, and then there'll be this thing, the Netflix. Neil Gaiman, The Sandman, which I have a little part in, which was really good fun. And a documentary I've been working on, which was while I was in Mexico, called A Year on Planet Earth, which is it's sort of about the fact that we had a wonderful time in Iceland a few weeks ago. I was standing on the biggest glacier in Europe, and it was covered in ice and snow, of course, like that, beautifully still and clear with a blue sky. And I was able to say to camera, which is sort of the point of this documentary, stand here in this stillness, the snow around you, the sound of a raven cawing is the only thing breaking the silence. It's very hard to remember that we are hurtling around the sun at 450,000 miles per hour as I speak, and that journey determines everything about life on this planet. And that's what this is about. It's about the journey around the sun and how it affects everything, the water cycles, the magnetism. I mean, just absolutely everything is owed to the sun. And it's about the seasons, essentially. And so I've shot things in the Sequoia National Forest and in Mexico for the monarch butterflies. And we're going back to Iceland. And it's places all around the planet are being filmed over the last 2 years by the crews that have been out there. So I'm very excited to do that because I love wildlife. I mean, I'm not I'm by no means a professional. Of course, I'm not a zoologist, but I'm very, very keen as an amateur, at least. And so I've been thrilled to be able to do that.
What's it called?
It's called A Year on Planet Earth.
A Year on Planet Earth. Okay. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And what's unusual about it, perhaps, is that it's quite a risk on their part. It's ITV, and ITV haven't been in the wildlife, the natural history space, as people call these things, really since the 70s when they used to do a series called Survival. So for them, it's quite a new thing, and they've thrown a lot of money at it and a lot of expertise and so a lot of ex-BBC Natural History Unit people.
Wow. Great. Awesome. Well, that's very exciting. 3 very diverse projects as well. Gosh, I don't know how you keep abreast of it all, but I suppose, brain the size of a planet, you're the right person to be doing that documentary. Thank you so much again. Simon?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Brilliantly. The hour and a half flown by.
Bless you. Thank you.
Could have done another hour and a half, I think.
You're very kind. Thank you for your very friendly questions. And I really enjoy myself. And here's to the next test against the West Indies.
Yeah. Well,
all we need is bowlers and opening batters. I mean, what's so difficult about that?
Actually, there's a Pakistan chasing Australia's target of 500.
Yes,
to look forward to tomorrow. So
that's really
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't. So yeah, because they declared on 92 for 2 or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And there was some brilliant batting by Pakistan tonight, actually. So that'd be an interesting game as well. We're spoiled for choice. Anyway, thank you again very much, and look forward to all your projects and seeing you soon. And good luck with it all.
You bet.
See you later.
Bye bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.